Our next speaker, I'm very excited to invite to the stage. Once again, she's been a good friend of mine for, I would say, nearly 15 years. And what I have seen out of this person is that her and her husband have pushed hard into living into their convictions in really inspiring ways. And what I've seen them do in their life has moved me. Her willingness to do the difficult in order to pursue what is good is the reason that we've asked Nicole Marshall to come and speak with you tonight. Nicole?
Is this on? Is this on? Oh, it is. Thank you, Jeremy. Where's my husband? Over here. Okay. He's nervous right now. In 2015, our family was pretty shaken. We, at the time, had, and still have, our three oldest daughters, Sophie, Ashlyn, and Lola. I would say Justin and I were in a pretty sweet spot doing ministry and here at church, and things were just good. And then we met a little girl who was in foster care at the time. She was actually living with Elisa, who you guys got to hear very first. We didn't know Todd and Elisa super well at the time, but I knew of this little girl. I had heard of her, and then one day, through a series of really providential circumstances, she ended up at my kitchen table. I was kind of on call for a friend who was providing respite care for her. She ended up sick and needed help, and so I said, sure, I'll just pick up all the kids, bring them back to my house, and do whatever we do after school. But then I kind of, it sunk in that this little girl was in foster care, and nobody really had given me the handbook on what we were allowed to do. Like, could I ask her name? Is that okay? Like, should I pull my kids aside and say, hey, don't call me mom while she's here, because that's kind of offensive to her? Am I allowed to feed her whatever I want, or do I need to call a case manager first? Like, I had no idea what I was doing, and it was really freaking me out. And I may have creepily sat at my kitchen table and took a picture of her so I could do the very adult thing and go lock myself in my bathroom and cry. And I sent the picture to Justin and was like, I just need you to pray for me, because I know this little girl is not a puppy, but I really want to keep her. So she just sat there at my table like a completely normal kid, eating lunch and carrying on with the other 800 kids that were in our house that day. And it just wrecked me. I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know how to sit there and see in real life what we have heard about as a crisis in Arizona. And Justin surprised me with his response to my desperate bathroom text and was like, well, I can't wait to come home and meet her. And I thought, oh, no, he's the no guy. So if Justin even hints at a yes, I know God is doing something very big. But my thought of trying to keep her was probably the first of a lot of crazy ideas I've had in the last 3 years. So fast forward from that moment at my kitchen table, and 6 months later, we were licensed to do foster care. We didn't know what we were doing. We started those classes convinced that we would somehow adopt that little girl, because she kind of fit perfectly into our little box, and we had 3 girls, and she fit age-wise perfectly in there, and her name, if I took out one of her middle names, had like the same amount of syllables as the other 3 girls, so it was a God thing for sure. She was going to be ours. We had made a conscious decision as husband and wife to not go with a faith-based organization for our licensing, mostly because we live church and ministry, and we thought, well, here's one area where we can step outside of that. We don't get that a lot, and so for our family, that was a really good decision for us, but we stuck out in that class, definitely. Our instructor was he was really charismatic about his family and the 5 sons that he had adopted, and he was really real and raw about the situation, which I think prepared Justin and I well getting into this mess of foster care. But it was really neat to be able to take our worldview shaped by the gospel into this class and share it just in certain areas about why we believe what we believe. But we definitely felt like fish way out of water. I actually just reconnected with that PS Maps instructor last week. I was a part of an event I'll talk about later, but he remembered me and we had the chance to kind of reconnect and talk. And he said to me, hey, I loved your story because I remember you and Justin coming in and being like, we are only going to adopt. Like, we know that's what we're here to do, and we've got this figured out. Thank you. Don't try and persuade us otherwise. We've got this. And then he said his favorite moment, as this often happens, is by the last class, we were very sober-minded and had decided that we were going to step into the scary unknown of opening our home to foster kids and not knowing what the end story would be. And so during the process of getting licensed, the little girl that we had met that had the right syllables and fit in the box had actually gone home to her biological parents, which is always the goal. We want to see families restored and made right. So that was a good thing. But we thought, hey, we didn't come this far to just take these classes and close the books. So we kept stepping through open doors in faith, knowing that God had brought us this far, so we would just keep going. The day that we got our license, I got an email from our licensing worker saying, hey, would you guys be interested in doing respite care this weekend for these two little kids? And I was like, yes, that is perfect. We will just kind of test drive this whole thing, and we'll bring these two kids in. It'll be very controlled, and they've already been, through like all the hard trauma stuff. So this is great. Yes, we would love to do that. And then literally I hit send, and the message pops back with, well, just so you know, these kids need an adoptive placement. So if you know of anyone, just keep that in mind. And I thought, sure, yeah, if we know of anyone that happens to have just gotten licensed for 2 beds and wants to adopt kids, yeah, we'll let you know if we find those people. So I proceeded to go and pick up these 2 little babies from the IKEA parking lot in Tempe. And I thought for sure this was going to be a traumatic event, so I came with donuts and stuffed animals. And what I didn't realize is this was the norm, as is for most kids. It's, okay, get out of this car, get into this car, and go with this stranger to who knows where. And so I drove them right here to church to meet Justin, and I remember just standing over there on the playground, and we were both like, well, so do we keep them? Like, I guess, like, we don't pick the ones that we had, naturally, so here they are. These are our kids. I don't know. It was a very surreal experience. But we thought, yeah, well, let's just give it a couple days and see how it goes. And they never went home. Oh, no, I thought you were seeing a picture. I was like, not yet. So they didn't leave. They didn't even go back to their foster mom. And I had this all planned out where they would go home and we'd kind of regroup and then bring them back. And that didn't happen. It was instant chaos. We are now a family of 5 kids. 4 months later, we brought in 2 more kids. That is a story that I could share for quite a while. I don't know how to work this. I should have asked. No? How do I? Oh, so by November of 2015, this is what our family looked like. That's Lola, Hope, Stella, Ashlyn, Sophie, Andre, and Micah. And they are all officially Marshalls. None of them are going anywhere. So that's where we're at now. I learned a lot about digging my heels in and refusing to give in to fear, even though those fears are very real. These kids may disrupt everything we know is normal. They may break multiple TVs and toilets and computers and poop in the backyard repeatedly. They may introduce all the rudest words you've ever heard to our girls who, up until that point, had not been allowed to watch anything but PBS Kids, except not Caillou, because he's super annoying. Yes, I know. These kids may leave And a judge may decide that they are going to go back to the family that ultimately they really do belong in. And we had no control over that. There was nothing we could say as the foster parent, you're not a part of that equation to make that decision, which feels very difficult when you're the one providing the care for these kids day in and day out. But we learned that it was best just to lean into the struggle and know that God had this and just walk by faith. We had so much revealed in our own hearts, and I think that quickly we learned how much foster care is a representation of the gospel, in that we were unlovable, yet Christ stepped into our story to bring about redemption and restoration. And it's not easy, and it's not pretty, and to the world around us, it doesn't always make sense, especially when we were kind of good to start with. People totally thought we were crazy, and I don't blame them. We were. But the fact that we're still standing is testimony that God carried us through that phase. God has continued to move in our family, and no more kids, but I knew that we wouldn't just be done that quick. I mean, we went from 3 kids to 7 kids in 4 months, and we were pretty sure we were I was pretty sure we were maxed. Justin was sure we were maxed. So we did close our license and kind of settled in to figure out, okay, what does life with 2 sons and 5 daughters look like? And I started to really struggle with getting them the support that they needed at school and trying to navigate the special education system. I loved what Jessica shared earlier because it lends itself to what we were experiencing. These kids had trauma, and so their brains are impacted, and they learn different, and they think different, and they respond different, and we were struggling to have the schools connect with us on what that was. So my friend Jenny Mullins and I reconnected over Facebook. I saw that she was working as an educational advocate, and I had a meeting at my daughter's school, and I called her up right before and was like, hey, is there any special words or phrases or things I should ask for at this meeting? And if you're a SPED parent, you know that's ridiculous. I was not prepared. And so she was like, hey, I'm just going to come and I'm going to help you because you're going to need it. And I did. And Jenny sat there and advocated for my daughter. And got her what she needed and collaborated with the school. And I was totally struck by how this was a picture of Christ as our advocate. And there was nothing I could do or say in that moment. I didn't even know what my need was, but she did. And she went and spoke on my behalf and my daughter's behalf. And it was a huge blessing. When we left that day, I looked at Jenny and I said, okay, I don't know what you just did, but we need to make this available to every family who is impacted by foster care, because there's so much to do on your own. This is too hard to add one more thing. So she and I decided to kind of get together and put our heads together, and we had learned about the Redemption Grant. And so, in just kind of 2 minutes time, we decided, hey, let's start a nonprofit. And I have 7 kids. I don't have anything else to do. I'm up for the challenge. So we formed Advocacy 31:9, and the name is from Proverbs 31:9, which says, speak up and judge fairly, defend the rights of the poor and needy, which we felt is synonymous with saying, be a voice for the vulnerable. And so that's what we've been able to do. It's been an incredible quick journey, as that seems to be the theme in our life, as we just move quick and crazy things happen. But in 4 months, we were up and running, and God has brought, I can't even tell you how many opportunities with the community around us, but the role that I get to play in this is the part where we take parents and caregivers and we train them how to advocate for their child's needs. Jenny does the hard work of going to the meetings and having a backbone, and I just do slides and say, this is what you should say when you get there. But these are all the cool connections that we've already made. We've gotten to work with AZ 127, DCS. We have a training coming up with CASA. Those are people that are court appointed by the judge to speak on behalf of the child. Arizona's Children's Association is where we got our family licensed, and they've invited me to come, I think, next week and train their staff. as well as the Arizona Department of Education. Like, these are big names to me, and I don't feel like I should be sitting at the table with them, but God had a plan for our family. So we're just super excited for what he's doing and the way that that God has kind of orchestrated this whole journey. And when I saw my PS Maps teacher last week, he said to me, "So did you ever think that you would be here?" And no, I didn't. This was not a part of our plan at all, but God had a better plan for us.